Howdy, folks. Come on in and take a seat.
Howdy!
Destroy all...
Howdy, y'all!
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing a howdy, y'all, boys. Come on in and take a seat for Destroy All Clickbait. Now,
Well,
serving a
dong
smorgas-
nabbit, wouldn't you know it? Huffington Post just published that there's a snake in my boot.
Oh, God.
Here's the 23 sexiest underboob snakes that have been in my boot by the Huffington Post. Anyway, we're now serving a smorgasbord of desperate nonsense and the very hottest of takes. I'm Adam, your waiter. With me are Ing, the sommelier, and Avi, the head chef.
Huh?
That's your role today. Oh,
I'm
nobody told you
booze.
you were cooking? Mm-hmm. Well, work on learning the bouquet of the hot takes that we're going to deal with today. And it was actually, it was a fairly rich week for clickbait, as really I guess it always is. But,
I mean, we do it in like 2 weeks, but yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean literally just this week. There was a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like we did. I don't know if you saw just a very quick little one, and it is food related, so we can segue into that. The one I put up in the DMs, in Twitter DMs, the
Hold
Mashable
on.
article.
Let me pull that up.
The cross-sushi.
No!
For sushi?
Cross-sushi.
No!
So this is,
I think this is the first one where my
Yes.
only reply is to just no!
No pout. Yep.
This
It is a pretty horrifying concept. Literally, it's done in the form of a video, this particular clickbait. And it's just,
which is a sin in of itself.
yeah. That's not helping.
Why, though?
Well, it's fusion cuisine gone horribly awry. It's sushi, in case you hadn't guessed, it's sushi inside a croissant.
Which are both delicious things, but why, though?
Well,
Oh, God.
yeah, it's...
No! You're making Jiro cry. This is Jiro nightmares of sushi.
He's going to give it up and become an accountant. But, yeah,
Jiro
to be
would
fair,
kill his son if his son did this. I'm just putting it that way.
I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know.
It's
But,
a good documentary.
I've
Like,
heard it's amazing, yes, but...
I've had croissant sandwiches before, and what
Right.
is sushi than just a very strange sandwich? But...
You know what?
Oh, wait! Are we
I know.
seriously arguing that sushi is a sandwich now? Is this now the debate that we're going to have?
You know what? You know what's fucking probably the worst?
What?
Is that as I'm going by this, I feel myself maybe softening on my stance, which is what's most insidious about it.
Yes, I know. I felt the same way, because it's salmon, which is actually a reasonable thing to put in a croissant
Yeah.
sandwich.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and they put ginger and, what else? I
So
think
are they
wasabi.
actually, because the way you make a croissant is that you laminate the dough so that it has
Right.
layers of butter. So during that lamination process, or after that lamination process, when they're rolling the dough to create the croissant, is that when they're rolling in the sushi? Because that's what it looks
I
like.
think that they're rolling it in before and cooking it. Like,
Yeah.
baking
Yeah.
it in, because that's how it looks, because it definitely looks like that you're getting a flaking intermingling with the sushi. And,
Which-
literally half of me saying this wants to punch me for, analyzing and talking about this.
Well, I mean, you have to wrap your head around how exactly does this work, and so why did somebody decide, that's a good idea. I'm going to take seaweed, rice, and salmon and roll it up into a croissant.
Well, I don't think they even do the seaweed.
No, they don't
bit.
use the-
No, that's seaweed in there.
They don't
Oh, is
use
it?
the rice. There's no rice.
There's no rice.
Oh, you're right, there is.
Oh, you're right,
Salmon,
there is no rice.
wasabi, ginger, and sesame seeds.
Yeah.
But it
you're
looks
right.
like
And
there's a
then-
thing of nori in there.
Yeah, they said nori was in there.
Okay, yeah,
So
then
you're right.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, if they bake it, is that even sushi anymore.
Yes.
Because now it's cooked.
Well,
Sushi does not refer to whether or not the fish is raw. Sushi refers to the rolling of the rice, which is why this is technically not sushi because it's not rolled rice.
yeah, I was about to say that, but in terms of the idea, like, God help me, I can't believe this, but in terms of the idea of a croissant witch inspired by sushi, like,
This is not horrible.
no, like,
Yeah.
I can see the connection now.
But you know what? It's kind of a really small amount of salmon for so much croissant.
I mean, yeah, but I can see you can probably change that. It's better than my initial reaction that somebody was taking a croissant and just taking a California roll and just, like,
And just
slamming them
pop, pop,
together like a kid playing with Barbie dolls, making them kiss.
Yeah. No, it has to be said, if they'd used almost any other form of sushi, it would have been horrifying.
Except unagi, that's fucking wonderful.
Okay.
Well, I personally
on
always
a croissant, though?
I tend to get the tempura shrimp,
No, I'm
but
saying
that's just me. But
I'm saying sushi is fine. I'm just saying in this particular combination, they did just about the only form of sushi that would work. I guess you could do it with tuna too. That would be okay.
Well, yeah, it would be kind of hard to do with, say, squid.
Yeah, that would be a pretty, or octopus, or even, well, crab might be okay. I don't know.
well, I think croissant and
No,
salmon
but
is
because
kind
if
of
you did it in crab, you would just have a weird crab cake.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I feel like we're getting pretty far away from sushi. As you say, there's no rice.
I'm kind of self-hypnotized there because to find things, I kept, like, rewinding and fast-forwarding, and I got to the point where the people are eating it, and just going back and forth of these people just putting the stuff up to their face and then taking it back and looking at it, just got, like, oddly mesmerizing to me.
Well,
Yeah.
again, this is not a bad idea, but it's
I
technically
guess.
not sushi because it doesn't have rice. Because I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure sushi refers to the rolling of the rice, not the fact that it has fish in it.
This is actually sort of reminding me of the old joke about how, somebody wrote a script in Hollywood and somebody told them that, hey, this is good and original. Unfortunately, the parts that are good aren't original, and the parts that are original aren't good.
Oh, God.
In this case, this is a great sushi croissant roll, but the parts that are, it's both good and sushi, but the parts that are good aren't sushi, and the parts that are sushi aren't good, basically.
Yeah.
So, they've managed to make it work by moving away from what they're claiming to be doing in the first place, essentially.
Yeah. Although now I'm starting to wonder if they switched out the type of flour they used and used rice flour instead, would that actually be an adequate substitute?
But would that even be a croissant then, if it's a rice? Can you make a croissant out of rice flour?
I don't know, because again, the way you make the way you make the dough to make a croissant is through lamination. It's I don't remember I think it's rough puff pastry that you make in order to make a croissant. So I don't know if you can substitute rice flour for the normal type of flour that you would normally use. So
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody has attempted that. I am not a baker. I am not a chef. I don't
you
know if
seem
that
to-
would work.
You
I
seem to
only
know a lot
watch
about
the
it.
Great British Bake Off. I don't actually bake. I actually don't live in a house with a functioning oven, unfortunately.
Wait, what?
Yeah, our oven stopped working, and so I don't have a functioning oven, so I can't bake in my own house. Sad face.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
For a second there, I thought you're a Dickensian orphan and you live in a burned out house with no furniture or something.
Oh, no. We definitely have way too much furniture in this house. We just don't have a functioning oven.
Yes. We're
And
learning a lot
honestly,
about-
at this point, we basically have to redo the whole kitchen because ovens have gotten so big that it won't fit in the existing place that our oven used to be.
Oh my god.
Yeah!
He's got
These are the
going
joys
here.
of living in a house that was built in the 70s, guys.
Oh, dude, I live in a house that's built in the 30s.
I'm also
But anyway,
taking
Aw.
guys, I made a gif of the croissant
Yeah.
eating.
How did you make a gift that fast?
Oh, gosh.
How did you manage that? Anyway, yes. I know, I agree. It's weirdly hypnotic. They've got this model eating a kursushi.
And then reverse eating a kursushi.
It's like that. It's like that motion comic book with Wolverine eating the pizza slice over and over again.
Although, you know what? If people are gonna just, take salmon and nori and roll it up into puff pastry and call it a kursushi, we can put pineapple on pizza, damn it!
Yeah.
I agree. I never disagreed with that. I'm down with pineapple on pizza.
There's more than enough people who hate Hawaiian pizza, and it's just kind of like, if people are going to do this kind of shit, we can let the Canadians invent Hawaiian pizza. It's fine.
Wait,
That's
Canadians invented it? That
Apparently.
This doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I can believe it. Well,
This is the wrong hemisphere.
Are you saying that it's impossible for Canadians to have pineapples imported?
I wouldn't say that makes it Hawaiian.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that it is impossible for Canadians to be Polynesian, yes.
Well, I mean, if you consider the fact
there is that, but Hawaiians did not invent Hawaiian pizza.
I know.
That's pretty like. I mean, for that matter,
and that makes
we're talking
me
about
sadder.
sushi, and the type of sushi like that we are familiar with is, from what I understand, almost as much of a Californian creation as it is a Japanese creation as well. So that's similar in those. Am I completely wrong about this, or?
What now?
Well, just that sushi was like the versions of sushi that we eat are pretty like the Americans contributed a lot to it being the way we know it versus Japanese sushi, which would be different.
It depends.
Yeah.
Like, obviously the California roll.
Right.
I mean, take a guess.
Yeah, although I don't think the Philadelphia roll was invented in Philadelphia. I think it's called the Philadelphia roll because it has cream cheese in it.
And
Right.
is awful.
Yeah, that doesn't
No,
sound
I'm
very good.
kidding.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh,
So
because
I just have to put
Well,
down
no,
that the
if you've
best
ever had salmon and cream cheese, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I know. It is
Fair
good.
enough.
But the best sushi, hands down, is unagi and its cousin, the dragon roll.
unagi, is that the eel?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Hey, I was right. Cool.
I
And
honestly, usually when I get sushi, I get safe sushi because I live in New Jersey where I don't know what around me is really authentic.
Yes.
So I get safe sushi, which is usually shrimp tempura.
Yeah.
So that's
I like
just
the
me.
shrimp. I like the tuna. By the way, yes, Wikipedia does confirm that Hawaiian pizza was invented by a Greek Canadian named Sam
Sure.
Panopoulos
In Ontario.
in Ontario. So not within, I live probably a fairly short drive
You know
from
what?
the creation of
He
Hawaiian
clearly rose above a bunch of, shortcomings of geography and everything else, but,
Apparently he passed away last year.
well, shit. I was gonna say, he clearly, did the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup of seeing two things.
And was like,
Well, there's
It was
then-
pizza has, a high salt content.
Mhm.
Pineapple both can be roasted and retain its sweetness, and sweet tastes good with salty.
Yep.
and let's just throw some ham on there for good measure.
Well, because people already eat ham on
Yes.
that, and ham already goes good with pineapple.
Yes. Well, the theory there is that ham, a roasted pig, is part of the Hawaiian luau, so that's a Hawaiian thing to have in theory. So I see the logic of that, but yeah.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, he did die at the age of 83, so he lived a good long life.
Yes, he has an accomplishment to his name that
Yes.
we can only dream of ourselves. Ironically, there is also Canadian pizza. There is a type of pizza known as Canadian.
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
roast goose and cheese curds.
Maple syrup and
Oh!
I know.
How
I
is
was
it
gonna
worse? How is it worse than my joke one? How?
I was just gonna assume it's just basically poutine on a pizza.
No, it's not. It is. Mine is also a joke.
Oh, thank God!
No, we don't actually put maple syrup on pizza.
Are
no,
you
I think
sure?
it's. Yeah, I'm sure. And in fact, actually, this seems to be somewhat disputed because I think it's something that a local chain that we used to frequent called Square Boy, they would have, or maybe a couple of different pizza places, they'd say, "Hey, here's a Canadian pizza," and it's basically just bacon, onion, and I think pepperoni is also on it. I don't even remember. Actually, I haven't had it in ages, so I think it was kind of an attempt to brand pizza as Canadian. It never really took off.
And
I
they
assume
chose
American...
3 really boring toppings.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely bacon on it. Yeah, no, it wasn't particularly wild. It had bacon on it. That was the big thing, obviously, because back bacon, because Canadian pizza. I mean, strictly speaking, you can get some pretty wild stuff on pizza. I mean, there's dessert pizza, right? You've seen that, right?
Well, that's basically the dough is a cookie and then they put chocolate on it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I've
cream, yeah.
heard it, but I have not attended a CC's.
Yes.
Neither have I. Although there's apparently a CC's kind of in between where I live and where you live now.
Yeah, I know.
So we could go to a CC's one of these days.
Our friend Jesse talked about sometime that we have to make, gather everyone to do basically a suicide pact / lunch there.
Okay.
Do they have CC's in Canada?
No, I don't know what that is. I would associate it with
CC's
Dairy
is a
Queen.
chain of pizza buffets.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have, we have pizza on buffets and Mandarin here in Canada. Maybe you guys have that too. I don't know. Do you know what Mandarin is? Mandarin's a Chinese restaurant, if you can believe it. But it has these huge buffets.
No,
Yes.
no.
It has these
That's
huge buffets.
crazy.
Yeah, but it's not all. It's not all Chinese food. Fully 50% of the food at a Mandarin restaurant is non-Chinese, and it
Really?
has stuff like pizza and all these desserts and all kinds of buns and just like puns. I don't know.
Well, to be fair, the last time I was at a
lasagna.
Chinese buffet, they did have Italian stuff in the buffet for some bizarre reason.
They put
Yeah.
a lot of Chinese buffets put at least one section of American kind of fast food stuff.
Yeah.
Because people will bring their kids who may not who may be too finicky to try new food.
Right, but this is this is literally there's a Chinese table and there's a equally big non-Chinese table with lasagna and French fries and sausages and all kinds of stuff that is no way Chinese,
That's
even
weird.
remotely.
There was a new Japanese buffet that opened up near us, and it is the best one because it's the only one in the state that serves sushi I can eat, being allergic to shellfish.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were allergic to shellfish.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's good
But
to
you
know.
can have unagi, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. And crab and tuna.
No.
Well,
Oh,
crab
no,
is a
crab.
shellfish.
Literally
Yes,
not
it is. Sorry,
crab.
what am I
Crab is
Yeah.
the one that is bad.
Crab
Sorry,
and
yes.
shrimp.
How are you bad at this? No!
You're right. Shell. It's a shell on a fish. I don't eat seafood. What can I tell you? I don't eat it. I'm not allergic. I just don't eat it very much. So. Why is that fish? It's not a fish. I object to that.
Well, because selling aquatic bug is a harder...
Yeah, just a little bit.
Giant, freaky, mutant aquatic bug that is somehow delicious. Yeah, exactly.
Come, eat and enjoy our aquatic bottom-feeding sea roach.
Yep. They don't look like miniature aliens. No. Definitely not.
And yet, somehow... And you have to wonder who was the first person to eat one of those things.
Oh no, we know that.
Who's the lottery, the historical lottery winner who went for the grossest critter you could ever look at, and then it turned out to be delicious?
I assume they were French.
No, I actually know that it was. I believe it was poor.
Poor?
Well, either that it was like really early done, or that it was like, I believe lobster was first done by like poor Romans.
Okay.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the Mediterraneans are they're big on shellfish, so that would make a lot of
But
sense.
it was
Yeah.
also the thing that, like, you're priced out of the land meat, and
Yeah.
here's a bunch of, slow-witted sea bugs.
Just have to figure out how to cook them. Oh, you just dunk them into boiling hot water? That makes perfect sense.
It's like, well, we need to cook them, how could we cook them where we have to look at them as little as possible? And I need to clarify, like, lobster was my favorite food before I was allergic, so...
Oh, well, that's...
Yeah, well, it's funny that of all the animals that you can eat, lobsters are the one where they put them alive in a giant tank and make you stare at them before you eat them. Like,
yeah, you can select the lobster that you want to have killed.
Yes! Choose the form of the destroyer!
They don't bring in, like, the cow.
Kneel before me, crab! I control whether you live or die!
I assume everyone here knows who David Mitchell is, correct?
Is he a Mitchell and Webb?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay, has everyone read his autobiography backstory?
I have not read that.
You should, because there's a great chapter in there where he details a trip going to France with his parents where he's like maybe 5 to 7 years old and they decide to cook a lobster in their RV and hilarity ensues. He was absolutely terrified, but listening to it is absolutely hilarious because his parents did not know how to cook a lobster and had to try to figure out how to cook a lobster. It's great.
Well, the funny thing about lobsters is they never stop growing. Basically, they get bigger and bigger and bigger the longer they live. So if they live for decades, there are some huge-ass lobsters out there.
Well, here's the also thing. Lobsters also do not die of old age.
Right.
That's true.
What they will die of, however, is kind of the downside to never stopping growing, is they'll be getting so big that they cannot successfully molt anymore without dying of exhaustion.
Oh, wow.
Or they get so large that they can no longer move their shells under their own power.
Oh my god.
I mean, that kind of counts.
No, because dying of old age specifically ties into a thing that's like proportionate to various diseases and organ failures thing, and this is, no, they don't die of that, they die of exhaustion.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It's good that there's a limit because
they're one of a number of vertebrae that are
invertebrate.
Yeah, invertebrate that are theoretically immortal. The other notable ones being the naked mole rats,
right?
Which also the naked mole rats also do not have any increase in their likelihood of death as they get older. Meaning that, and virtually all naked mole rats simply die of misadventure or disease, but it is not age-related.
Wow.
Huh.
That's very
pretty much
strange.
Then it comes up the idea that it's like, okay, say that, like, a healthy young mole rat has, like, a 15% chance of either succumbing to a deadly injury or getting a disease and dying.
Right.
Next year, it still has 15% chance of that. The year after that, still 15% chance. Again and again, seemingly indefinitely, until simply that chance comes up and they die, but that chance never goes up. Unlike with humans, your chance of dying of the cold goes up once you get elderly.
So, how old have naked mole rats gotten, then?
I believe that they've gotten to be like 30 years.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, that's impressive, but when you say they're theoretically immortal, I'm like, is there a 200-year-old naked mole rat out there? We must find it.
Oldest that we know is up to 32 years.
Okay, all right. But I guess they're also likely to get eaten, those things. They don't really... They're kind of low on the food chain, right?
Well, actually, the main reason is the cause of death is, to put it this way, so you know how moles have special claws to dig?
Yeah.
Right?
Know how naked mole rats don't have that?
Oh.
Yes.
They excavate their burrows because they use their heads to dig.
Oh. Okay.
And they are eusocial, so death by misadventure is a common one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
From things of, like, tunnels collapsing upon themselves or simply, like, accumulating injuries that lead to death. They also seemingly do not feel pain, presumably also because they need to spend their life digging with their head.
Do you mean, like, with their teeth? Or do you mean, like...
I mean kind of both.
Yeah.
Like, they
Like
literally do, like, use their whole head in digging. They, like, chew their way through rock, and they, like, move the dirt around using their whole head, unlike claws like most other burrowing creatures do.
So they can't use their paws at all to dig?
I mean, they're not adapted for it. Their heads are what they use to dig.
Okay. Okay.
Nature's mistake, the naked mole rat.
I mean, you say mistake, but they're also extremely resistant to cancer, live longer than, nearly any other rodent.
Yeah.
Are eusocial mammals, and, like, one of the few that are, and can survive an amazingly long time without oxygen.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Well, that makes sense if they're underground.
Yeah.
But yes. So basically, God was kind of like randomly assigning attributes. His dice rolls were hitting a lot of natural 1s and natural 18s when he was assigning things to the naked mole rat, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we'll assume that's the case.
Natural 20s, whatever.
Well, clearly they did not. Clearly their dump stat was charisma because
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, they are the ugliest damn things you've ever seen in your life.
They're so ugly, it kind of slides into cute until they open their mouth, and you see the fact that they have no lips means that there's no clear distinction between the inside and outside of their mouth, and it's just like it's like Jim Henson made a Muppet out of a dead animal.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's move on to,
Let us not move on. I love these things.
I know. Well,
the only naked mole rat I care about is Rufus, and he's not real, so...
Fair enough. Well, let's who's
if
Rufus?
Rufus was real, he'd be very unhappy that he was taken away from his very large family.
I know. Oh, God.
Yeah. I got a picture of a naked mole rat here. Who is Rufus, by the way?
From Kim Possible.
Ah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, since we're speaking about children's entertainment, let's talk about this one that Ing linked to earlier in the day, also in the DMs. The Atlantic article saying, "Throw your children's art away." And if there's a more naked example of riling everyone up via clickbait, I'd like to hear of it. Yeah, this article feels like it was written by someone who may have been a mild sociopath.
Well, okay, so first thing I'm seeing, this is seemingly their first thing written for The Atlantic, so great fucking start.
Oh, God.
But it got the clicks.
Oh, God, they are a parent.
Yeah, no, they have children. Or at least they claim to have children.
But yes, no, this, just the fact that my favorite part of this article is just that it's a woman, right? It's Mary Townsend. It gets into a whole thing where she talks about the philosophy of the value of art. Debates about the proper way to value and preserve art have existed for millennia. For example, Socrates was known for his willingness to discard all art completely on the grounds that any representation amounted to a false truth. But Plato, his student, was exceedingly concerned with his own work's preservation. Anyway, so it's like, that's all well and good to talk about the intellectual preservation of art. That's not why you're preserving your child's artwork.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for like the value it will have for future generations, or for the, art, not even really the artistic development of them as an individual, let alone their contribution to the art world. You're doing it because it's an emotional factor, which she barely engages with in this entire article.
Although, see, the thing is, I work in a framing department, so we get a lot of children's artwork, and some parents want to spend all the money in the world to preserve their child's art. And some parents, they just want the cheapest thing that we possibly have, and of course their artwork isn't standard size, so it doesn't fit into any of the frames we have. Right. So it's just kind of however you feel on that big old scale, whether you want to spend all of the money or almost no money at all, it's just kind of if you value your kid's artwork, they will probably respect you more. Yeah, that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Well, yeah,
and if you don't want your kid to become an artist, then yes, throw it all away, because then they think that, I'm not good, and then they won't pursue an art career.
Yeah,
in all likelihood.
Can we point out that this person literally had the fucking gall and lack of self-awareness to use the sentence, for example, Socrates?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then they mention Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in the next paragraph.
Yeah, trying to build this philosophical case for it is kind of insane, because nobody's talking about, well, yes, I must have Kimmy's artwork in a museum. And Avi, you're talking about people framing their kids' artwork, and fine, do what you want to do, and maybe they did something particularly special. And I can certainly see keeping one or two pieces and being elevating those. But all you need to do is keep them in a shoebox. You will want to look at those again. Absolutely, 100%. You will want to look at your child's artwork at some point in the future. And they will probably want to look at their artwork at some point in the future.
I think one of the most interesting pieces of kids' artwork that I've done was I framed two pieces. One was drawn by her son, and it was a portrait of her, and he drew it when he was about 5. And then one was done by her grandson, which was another portrait of her when he was also about 5 or 6. So it's just kind of if you save your kid's artwork, shit like that could possibly happen.
And people... Yeah, so go ahead.
No, that's my main point. Shit like that could happen, where you have your son, where it becomes a generational thing, and that's very, very nice and sweet. And a lot more sentimental than, they did a thing, it's not very good because they don't have any motor skills, so why am I keeping it?
Yeah.
Yes, but you're forgetting that eventually, if you've looked at this art long enough, the art becomes pitiful, emptied of meaning. It remains, at best, a sign that the child has moved on to another equally inferior moment of her life, already coloring on something else. The crisis of children's art starts here, when the work feels both important and irritating all at once. That feeling might just be you contemplating your own mortality.
Yeah,
there are so
I'm sorry,
much going
millennials
on
are the selfish one?
Yeah, I'm not...
Can you imagine just your kid, showing you a drawing of, a boat there, and this person crumpling it up? Jimmy, stop reminding me of death!
And, I don't know if they're just trying to wax philosophical about what happens to a lot of kids around the age of 8 or 9, and that's when they realize that, hey, I'm not that good at drawing. Okay, so when kids go to draw a table that's round, they'll draw a big circle, and then they'll draw 4 legs.
Right.
And the 4 legs won't make any sense in terms of the big circle they drew.
Right.
There comes a point, usually it's around the age of 8 or 9, when they realize, wait a second, the big circle with the 4 sticks sticking out isn't actually how that table looks. And that's mostly because they don't have an understanding of things like perspective and things like that, and foreshortening and things like that. So when that hits their psyche, that's usually when kids stop wanting to do art.
But Avi...
But that's not what they're talking about here. They're talking about something else.
But Avi,
they're trying to talk about that, but they're not talking about that.
In defense of those those children may not understand perspective, but clearly neither does this writer.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not.
Zing.
Also, I just want to point out, using the phrasing, blank feels both blank and blank all at once is horrible fucking writing, and an editor should have caught that.
Probably, yeah.
This writing is so ephemeral and pitiful, it reminds me of my own mortality.
I mean, yeah, that's really. You know what else does that? Children existing, like the fact that children grow up and age rather quickly compared to adults is what's going to remind you of your own mortality, not their art specifically. So it's like, if you can't deal with the fact that your children are going to make you feel old, perhaps you shouldn't be a parent. You know?
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, yeah, it's just so weird that they...
And they make the argument for, like, not saving this stuff because you never know what the kid is going to remember. It's like...
Well, God forbid they see either A, you throwing their artwork away, or B, their artwork in the trash itself.
Yeah. But no, the person is arguing. They're kids, and you're just trying to make yourself feel better about the fact that you need to shit-can your kids' shit.
I mean, I got a gift from my nephew from his birthday.
Did it make you think of death?
My first thought was, well, my own mortality. But my second was a treasure.
I'm gonna die!
Yeah. Well, it was my birthday gift, and it was a treasure map. And it's just the sweetest, I know, it's the sweetest thing. I literally have it on my fridge still. And I mean, someday I'm probably going to lose it or whatever. I'm not going to pretend I'm going to, like, carefully hang on to it and stuff. But, I mean, how can that not make you feel good? And how can you not want to hold on? I can see if they do, because some kids are super artistic. They may do hundreds of drawings. You're probably going to lose some of them. Sure, you may throw some of them out. Like, let's be reasonable. It's just a logistics thing at a certain point. You don't want to hang on to everything. But this is literally saying, no, definitely throw it out. Like, once you're done with it, throw it out. Don't bother keeping it so you can come back to it in 20 years. It's like, also those love letters that your husband or wife gave you when you were courting, you should throw those out, because that's ephemeral, and you've moved past that area in your life. The postcards that you sent from vacation, you should throw those out, because it's ephemeral. Like, everything's ephemeral. Why are you keeping anything under this logic? You know what I mean?
Good news, everyone! I found Great-Grandpa's letters from when he was serving in the Civil War. Right through the shredder.
They're useless!
That's too ephemeral for me. That's like old, man.
I'm slightly surprised they didn't try to go with a weird Buddhist route for this, where you're not supposed to want to hold on to material things. But the thing is, your children's artwork isn't just necessarily a material thing. It could be a sentimental thing, depending on what it was that they drew.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. No one's keeping it for the, the quality of the artwork, I assume.
And
it's just
it's also the thing, it's like, no, look, I can't make an argument that this is a thing you should care about. Because basically it comes down, I don't know how to explain to you that that you should care.
The rallying cry of our times.
Yeah, care about your kids, damn it. No matter how much you think their art sucks.
I even want to believe that this person did in fact keep all their kids' artwork, and they just they did it to be shocking,
Yeah,
to tell other
I
people.
think a lot of this article is largely fucking nothing. Although, dear God, that one there about the kids, how ephemeral it is, and the kids have moved on. It reminds me of death.
Yeah, that is. There's a lot going on psychologically.
That's kind of the money quote there. It's like, look, I don't know how to answer it when it seems like you resent your children because they're gonna outlive you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's also a weird thing where it gets to like the last part of it where they were like, boomers were raised on nostalgia. And it's just kind of like, have you not been paying attention to like the past 5 years where everything is nostalgia? For millennials especially? Like, it's not just that generation. It's every generation. We all have nostalgia for something.
Yeah. I mean,
So...
I'm fairly sure families used to keep records of their, like, if you're a 19th century, nobleman, I'm fairly sure you have records of your family that go back a ways.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't some new phenomenon where people want to hang on to their family history, So tying that in is like, we talked a few episodes ago, we talked about how kicking at millennials has become a major source of clickbait. I do feel like we're going to see more and more kicking at boomers is the same thing from the opposite direction.
Probably as more Gen Xers and millennials start to write pieces like this.
We're going to see those boomers, like that's going to be a cheap applause line basically in these things more
Probably.
and more, I think. So, because I always say, with both the boomers and the millennials, the ones that you resent the most it's not the boomers or the millennials, it's like a certain group, usually the most pampered and privileged and obnoxious of that particular era. Those are the bad ones. And we've always reframed it as a generational clash, and it's mostly just, people who have their heads up their asses, who exist throughout time and space. Such as this person.
Yeah, and a big part of it is that they want to be shocking, but they also don't want to say anything.
Right.
This is where this is a lot of back and forth of
Yeah, this is definitely college book report stuff where they needed to fill pages on like a one idea. And it's actually in some ways well written, or at least making an appearance of look at how I've considered this, and look at all this philosophy I'm putting into this, and all this intellectual thought that I'm putting into it. And it almost brushes against some interesting points, but it's really just, I have a crazy title that'll make everyone click on it, that'll get everyone wrought up. How can I pad that out to an article? That is very much what it feels like once you scratch the surface of this one. Anyway.
I do have to say, I think my favorite sentence, because of how ridiculous it is the point of life isn't to prolong youth, but to have grow up. To have grown up. Like, that's not the point of life. Growing up is not the point of life. It's not the point of life.
Also, it's like keeping the shit isn't to prolong the childhood there.
No.
It's because you might actually have some sense of fond memory of your kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. She's trying to frame it as unhealthy. Like you're clinging to the past. It's like, for God's sake, you're allowed to keep some mementos of your own life.
I understand not wanting to have a hoarder mentality, but it's okay to keep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then just wait, and then ask your kid, hey, look at the stuff I kept. Do you want us to still keep it?
And it's obnoxious to be prescriptive about it for people. Avi, let me know if I'm being offensive there, but a lot of this feels like kind of the bullshit white/Westerner version of Buddhism.
Oh yeah, no, definitely it is.
Yeah,
which is why, again, I'm surprised she didn't go into the Buddhism angle or the belief that you aren't supposed to acquire material things. And again, it's just kind of like your children's artwork is not material; it's sentimental.
Yeah,
or at least it should be sentimental.
Not by name, but it's like going into the idea of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially with just how faux meditative everything about this is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's probably why I'm just kind of like, it's okay to have nice memories and to look back at things, because if we don't look back, we can't figure out what our future is. Like, Like, that's a legitimate thing.
This also, I can't help but think of as well, our good friend Ayn Rand, who we've discussed before.
Yes.
Supposedly, there's a story that at one point she had to go away or something when she was a child, growing up. I believe, grew up in Russia, and her mother literally threw out all her childhood toys. Which she was still a child at this point. It wasn't like she wasn't like a teenager. It was like she was 8, and suddenly she had no toys. And her mother was like, "Yeah, you didn't need those. That you're done with those." You know, it was the same. So it's funny. This is making me think of the same mentality, and this is the kind of thing.
Do you want Ayn Rands? This is how you get on Rands.
Oh my god!
You want Ayn Rands? Exactly.
This is how you do it.
Yep,
Although, granted, there's a lot of people who do that to themselves, like. Because I think it's going to become less common, but there are a lot of people who are like, as soon as they become quote-unquote adults, they get rid of all of the things that they feel like make them quote-unquote kids. And a lot of that has to do with comic books and video games and stuff like that.
Well, I'm really bad about actually not keeping stuff that I, like, years later I might be like, oh, I wish I'd hung on to that. I can actually completely kind of relate to that. But that's me doing it to my own stuff. I'm not doing it to my kid. My parents didn't do it to me. They didn't chuck out all the stuff I was done with.
Right.
All the stuff that I'd, supposedly outgrown. And yeah, you're right. There's a point where you might be like, oh yes, I'm too cool for whatever I was, whatever. I don't want this stuffed animal. I'm embarrassed that I played with this stuffed animal. But then, when you become an adult, you want that to still be here. I do still have. I had a big box of all my old Transformers toys that I hung on to for like literally a decade or two, and I started to hate Transformers by the time I became, a teenager. I was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed that I like that stuff. It's just a bunch of stupid toys. But I hung on to them, and now I'm giving them to my nephews, and they love them. Like they adore them. And it's like, wow, okay, cool. Another generation is getting use out of these toys, basically. So that's another thing. I mean, it's not going to happen with children's artwork, I guess. But it is interesting. I mean, we don't have a lot of children's artwork from, like, the 19th century that I'm aware of, do we? Or am I completely insane about that?
Largely, no, we don't. And I think that's in part because of weird class systems and the fact that, like, these days kids go to public school and they'll make art at public school and bring it home because, again, I work in a frame shop, so that's largely a lot of the children's art we frame is stuff that kids have made at school. So that's not something that necessarily would have happened, like, in the early 20th century.
Right. Yeah.
The only quote-unquote children's art that I've ever seen was the stuff Picasso did when he was very, very young. But that's because he was a prodigy. He was drawing well-proportioned people as like a 5-year-old, which is not normal.
And also, like, amusingly, is the opposite of what he would be known for.
Exactly. Right. Well, that's part of the reason why he was doing that kind of artwork as an adult is because he felt as though he never had a childhood, so he wants to draw the way children draw, which is basically simplified form, stick figures, and warped perspective. Like, again, the whole thing where you draw a round table, so you draw a big circle with 4 sticks sticking out of the bottom. Is that correct? Technically, no. But is it the essence of that table? Technically, yes. So that's what he was doing as an adult. So, yeah.
Well, but the fact that we do have drawings of his from when he was 5 or whatever, and again, I guess if he was a prodigy, they're more likely to hang on to it. But
I think also his father was also an artist and recognized, hey, my kid's really good at art. Let me save this.
Because I'm kind of wondering to what degree when did kids start to draw a lot? Like, technically, it's probably true that for much of human history, kids didn't have materials to draw with, right? Like, it took a while before you could get to the
probably
point where
nothing that could be saved, I would say. If that makes sense.
I mean,
not that nothing was saved, but
we have found, like, some fairly ancient homework.
Right, that's true.
That included, like, sketches of the teachers and all.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just it. It was homework, not, oh, let's give Timmy a crayon and see what they draw, like for recreation. That might have been a bit of a luxury.
The sketches in, like, the marginalia.
Right.
But again, those are people who would have gone to school, and typically, depending on what time period and area we're talking about, only the privileged would get to go to school. Whereas, after World War II, pretty much everyone got to go to school, at least within the United States. Like, we have a public school system now in place where pretty much everyone gets to go to school, and depending on how young they are, they pretty much always do kids art in school. Yeah. Unless, they happen to be in a school system that doesn't have an arts program, which would suck. So.
Yes, which is common.
They basically many.
Schools. Yeah. They had schools for quite a while. I mean, like, yes, a public school system was established, but there were, think of the Western, school marms who would go out to teach the kids who didn't have an education otherwise. But
right,
you're right.
But I think their focus was mostly things like reading, writing, arithmetic. They probably weren't busting out the charcoals for kids to draw with.
No.
Unfortunately.
Right. I mean, it was definitely not very advanced, but I mean, they did have. It wasn't uncommon for people to have schools, going back a few hundred years. It wasn't just fairly recent, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing about this article that gets me, which is probably more than the gist of it, that, like we said, is a lot of, like, talking around things, and it's like a lot of soccer mom navel gazing. Is just how, again, it's more stuff of just diminishing, like, the concept of art as unimportant, or that this is not a thing you should encourage kids to. Like, we did a bit ago the thing that we got too many mediocre artists.
Yeah.
And this is what it reminded me of.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, all kids' art essentially looks the same. Like, it's all very representational because, again, round table, 4 sticks, etc., etc. Because it's not about being accurate, it's about having the essence of something. So that's how kids' artwork fundamentally is, and that's how it's probably always going to be. And it's going to be a very select few who will be able to translate what they see in front of them onto a piece of paper in a way that is quote unquote correct. So it's just kind of like, if you don't want to encourage your kids' art, then fine, go ahead, throw it all away. But I have a suspicious feeling that you won't be doing good things to their psyche if you do that.
No. Well, as you say, they do talk all this big game about intellectual, concepts about art with Aristotle and Plato and everything, but you're right.
It's completely fucking irrelevant.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is absolutely irrelevant. And then there's
just a sense that, Socrates said that all art was garbage.
Yeah, sort of.
It's like, Socrates said a lot of shit. That's why we poisoned him.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Nobody liked Socrates. But I mean, I think you're right. There's a sense that she doesn't get, like, there's no sense of the value of art at all, whether it's kids or adult artwork.
Do you know why we're putting you to the death, Socrates? Do you? This is what we're talking about!
Is it what we're talking about? Yes.
Our one listener who's a philosophy major really liked that joke.
Yeah.
Is this sort of nostalgia good for the soul, or is it ultimately a weakness that fails to offer satisfaction?
The point I was getting at is that Socrates was probably very annoying.
In
person, because people who use the Socratic method are very annoying.
Yes. Yeah, I like the idea that, like, we've framed him as this brilliant intellectual titan and rebel and challenging of the thing. It's like, yeah, but he probably just pissed everyone off as a big... And he was literally a know-it-all. Like, literally, and not only that, but of course he famously said, well, I don't know anything. I know nothing. I just, I am not a guy, like the false humility of Socrates, right? And then, of course, but then they said, oh, but he's the wisest man on earth because he knows nothing.
I mean, that has some wisdom in it too, but I could see just like, fucking Zeno or one of the Stoics going like just in the background making ye olde jerk off hand motions.
Rolling his eyes.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, you'd like to hear what some of the other philosophers who didn't last thought of Socrates at the time. I said Aristotle. I think anyway. But yeah.
So I have one question, just for curiosity's sake, since we're all three of us are artists in some capacity. Did our parents save our artwork in any which way that we are aware of?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely saved some of mine, and actually gave it to me, and then I probably lost some of it in various moves. So that's not on them. But
okay.
Yeah. No, actually, you know what? I do have some pretty old stuff buried somewhere in here. It's not like I take it out to look at it very often, but I think I have the first comic I ever drew somewhere. If I was careful enough to retain it. But you always go through those periods where you're like, I don't need this anymore, and you toss it, and then you're like 5 years later, you're like, I wanted that. I wish I'd kept it. But yes, my parents very much kept my art and were very encouraging to me for my art.
Okay.
So, there you go. What about yours?
Yeah, same.
Same, also. There's one particular thing that I did in kindergarten that my mom actually would keep in her cubicle at work at her various jobs, so when she moved from job to job, it always ended up going back up in her cubicle until most recent years, because it's kind of weird to still have your daughter's kindergarten artwork up when she's essentially an adult. So, but that was something that she had up in her workspace for a very long time.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, no, it's exactly that sentiment. And then there really is a point where you're like, no, I would really like to see this again. Maybe not things you drew when you were like 4, but when you were sort of 8 or 9, and maybe you did something kind of interesting. Like I say, I did comics when I was 6, but also like when I was in middle school, I was doing all kinds of comic related stuff, and it was and I'm kind of like, oh, I want to dig that out and see if it's still here. Again, there's a vague feeling I might have thrown some of that out, but now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, gee, maybe I do have those. Those were kind of stupid, but at least it would be funny to look at and see how I've evolved as a as a creator. So anyway,
what about you, Ing? Anything particularly interesting to anecdote?
Mom kept a lot of stuff, and kept some stuff that I really don't like, but also I don't complain about it because it makes her happy.
Okay.
To have that stuff on the wall, even if it's stuff that like I know is like basically and giving some devil its due to this writer, some just like childish garbage stuff, but it was earnest attempts at the time, and again, it made my parent happy to have it.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, which is the idea, obviously.
Yes.
Even if it's just...
It's also the one where it's like, I don't know, like where I sat there, I don't know how to tell you that the key problem is that this shouldn't be a big source of, like, debate or angst for you. Like talking to the writer, it's like you seem to understand that there is some sort of disconnect between you and how you and other parents see things, but not. It's like no one can explain this to you. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
I feel rather bad for her child or children. Oh well.
Yeah.
Unless, again, she was just doing it for shocking clickbait and actually keeps all her child's
Okay, look. Even then, though, they still put out for the whole world to see a thing
Yeah.
basically put out, my child stuff is crap, and I angsted over whether to just throw it out.
Yep.
It's like,
Exactly.
yeah, thanks, Ma.
That's gonna go.
It's like my new click piece is there. Every time I bathed my kid, I had to fight the air to just hold the head under until the bubbles stopped.
Yeah, oh God, yes, exactly. Your child will someday be able to read that. They will get old enough to read that someday.
I feel like this is the sort of values flip side of the coin. People said, like, well, don't do sex work. What if your parents find out about it? It's like, don't write this. What if your kid finds out about it?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It's on the internet. It's on the internet forever now.
Exactly.
And at very least, you're going to be fielding a bunch of questions like, so, did your mom just, hate you?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So this is why you didn't go into the art field.
Uh-huh. So the opposite of Christopher Robin, or whatever. Those books where the parent literally wrote, or in Gone Girl, where she's the child of parents who wrote her into their stories, and it created impossible expectations for her,
Yeah.
It's the opposite of that, basically. Oh, I always had this, my parents made money off of clickbait, talking about how much they didn't want to keep my artwork, and how much they didn't care about me.
Also, the concept of having, a kid that, has enough resources where they can make artwork is all that, and keeping your kid's artwork is in many ways a luxury that a lot of people cannot have, especially when we're talking in a country that has a lot of education inequity and just general child care inequity.
Yep.
So it's geez, how can I just say, really white people problems? But yeah.
Kind of, just a little bit. I mean, apparently what spurred them to start throwing away their kids' artwork was the fact that they received boxes from their mother and mother-in-law from their school days, and it was just boxes and boxes of stuff.
Yeah.
And that, their parents kept, and it's just kind of at least look at it and be happy, and then you can throw it away because your parents gave it to you to decide what to do with it.
Because
if you
your
want to
parents
throw it away,
gave a shit?
Yeah. Your parents gave a shit. They're showing you they gave a shit. Now it's up to you whether or not you want to throw it out, or maybe keep a few pieces. That, paying some kind of visceral memory and from when you were happy. Hopefully.
Yes. Well,
So
I think
We wanted to remind you of what you were like before you started writing for The Atlantic.
where
No,
did
you
we go
misunderstood.
wrong?
This wasn't nostalgia. This was an intervention.
Do you remember? You remember when you used to care, and you didn't just write clickbait? Please come back to us. All is forgiven. Don't fall into Jeet Here's clutches. Anyway, let's do one more one. I think we've milked that one dry. So there's this other one which just exploded today, and it's delving into the. I think Avi, you'll be able to help us out. This is delving into the murky world of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about Fantastic Beasts, unfortunately.
No,
it's
but
either
it is
this or me suggesting that Avi and I try to explain Bowsette to Adam.
Well, we definitely have to do that, because that's basically our Waluigi segment. So.
Yes. Okay. So we'll come back to that. But this is, as I understand it, with the Harry Potter thing, because it was the snake who was Voldemort's snake, was originally a person.
Oh, God.
Did you not hear about this? Have you not?
No, I just saw the picture and I didn't read the article.
Yeah, so she was a woman, and an Asian woman at that, and that was a snake, and it was kind of people, as seems to frequently be the case with J.K. Rowling.
God.
It ended up being a little problematic. And kind of, she's now, it's become a running gag now that J.K. Rowling just keeps, like, retconning all the wonders of her how great her stories were in ways that she didn't bother to write at the time. Like, there's the famous, Dumbledore's gay. And as people have said, well, that's great, but you didn't write him that way, and you just said it retroactively, sort of to claim credit for it, right?
Yes, for credit, for reference, the fact that Dumbledore's brother has an arrest for fucking a goat made it into the book.
Oh, yeah.
He does? I don't remember that part.
His brother was arrested for, what was it, unlawful charms on an animal.
Oh my God.
And later when they meet him, he is living with a goat living in his house.
Oh my God.
The implication of the joke is very clear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that kind of went over my head, I have to say, because I don't have a filthy mind like you two. It's...
Okay,
yeah.
So human turning into a snake, that is something that we do have in the Harry Potter universe, where people can transform into animals. That is a thing. And sometimes that is something that is supposed to be something that is registered with the government, but we do see cases where it isn't registered with the government. Okay, that's all perfectly fine. But I'm very confused why you would name the character Nagini, which is a Sanskrit word that basically means female snake.
Right.
That is based off of, that comes from the word Naga, which means snake.
Right.
Which is also a race of people from India.
Yeah.
And somehow, you don't take any of that into account when you create this character. Very, very confused.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I am also laughing at so much of the Voldemort. This is my familiar snake.
This is my familiar, the female snake. Female snake.
Yep.
But like, Nagas are supposed to be an actual race in India. Like, does she just not bother to do any...
Like a fantastical thing?
Yes and no.
Okay. No, because I know of the mythological one.
Right, exactly. So there are supposed to be quote-unquote snake people, but then there are also actual people who consider themselves Nags. So it's just kind of like... Does she just not care anymore? Is really what it comes down to. Not that like part of me feels like she didn't really care in the first place, because there's a lot of dumb world building in Harry Potter in general, but the fact that she's expanding that world, she is just not doing any research at all, is she?
Yeah. Well, this is, as I've said, I mean, the issue here is like, there are no major Asian... I mean, okay, there's one semi-minor, semi-major Asian character in Harry Potter, from what I recall, which is Harry's brief fling. But although she doesn't really do much in the stories.
She's his date, that's it.
Yeah. And so this is kind of like, oh, look, I got an Asian woman in there. And it's like, yeah, but from what I understand, I don't know the Fantastic Beasts stories either, but from what I understand, she turns into a snake and is trapped as a snake in Harry Potter's time, even though this is a flashback to, decades before. And then she gets killed.
Yes, this snake was once a person. It's like, well, that really makes it hard to... Thanks, that really put a damper on feeling proud for Neville Longbottom for the one thing he fucking contributed in the whole narrative.
This is a quote, and this is the last paragraph in the article, where the actress reveals that the character can transform from human to snake at will, yet due to her mysterious blood curse, she knows that eventually she'll become a snake permanently.
Yeah.
So, what?
Well, this is... Yeah, apparently she's not an animagus, she's a maledictus, which is, I
Uh,
don't even know what that means and what that
I
is.
don't know what
But
that means either.
apparently it somehow makes it okay. I don't, you know,
well, no, I don't think it makes it okay. It just is like I just decided to make another up fancy word
yeah,
because I need to explain why this is happening, and so this is happening, and I don't see any reason why this is wrong because I have clearly done my research dating back to the culture in which I stole the name for the snake from.
yeah, yeah, that's,
Hmm.
I'm sorry, does it also highlight the thing there that it, like, seemed like, okay, you were getting warmer and warmer, that it's the thing there, okay, well, the name comes from India, and is,
Yes.
and is referencing, like, some Indian mythology, of which there might also be some Indian ethnicity involved, so we're casting an East Asian woman. It's like,
yeah. Exactly.
it's like, well, you got
to-
the right continents? Question
To-
mark?
And truth be told, Hinduism did have a fairly widespread throughout Asia, like a surprisingly widespread throughout Asia. But it was mostly through Southeast Asia and Indonesia. So, and East Asia isn't entirely out there, but it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No.
It still doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, it's a case of where I think this, and this is an issue that happens sometimes where people go, look, it's colorblind casting, and we cast a POC. It's like, yeah, but you can't just stick them in throughout the story no matter what, because sometimes having a certain character that way creates a problem that wouldn't have been there otherwise. And I mean, you gotta say, okay, they're trying at least, but as somebody said, if you're making a story set in World War II, you don't cast POCs as Nazis for inclusion, right? Like it's not that's not helping anything. That's
Yeah.
you could say, oh, I'm casting a multiracial cast. It's like, yeah, but there are certain roles you have to think about before you cast them, obviously.
Yeah.
And
and
this is
and,
getting
and
into
choosing a deliberately Sanskrit name.
Mhm.
Like it is Sanskrit. It is based on a Sanskrit word.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
I've
Like
got to
this whole
assume
thing
she
is just
was.
stupid.
I've got to assume she was referencing Rikki Tikki Tavi by Rudyard Kipling with the name.
Probably.
Because the snakes in those are named Nag and Nagina.
Yeah,
which
that's
again,
I mean, before the reveal that it was a person, I kind of would have said that you could just dismiss it by Voldemort named the damn
Right.
snake.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Voldemort was just being an edgelord and just named the damn snake.
Yeah,
like
it's not even. I mean, if your snake is named Snake in Hindi, that's not even that big a deal. It's just that if you then reveal that they used to be a human being, and then
And that this was their birth name.
apparently their birth name.
yeah,
And
oh my god,
we're supposed to believe that they are East Asian of some kind, and we probably won't even ever find what sort of East Asian, because God forbid we ever get a clear parse of that, because we
Yeah.
never do.
I was gonna make a joke that, your child is born. Yes, I will name it Snake. But this is also the book story that has a werewolf who's named Wolf Wolf.
Yeah, that's true. Remus Lupin.
It's wolf,
Wolf
in
Wolf.
2 different languages. Wolf Wolf.
Wolf Wolf.
Which
You're-
which I'm sorry,
not
but
wrong.
Wolf Wolf is a much better name.
Yeah.
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 It's so
Yeah.
stupid it becomes awesome.
Well, to be fair, a lot of names in like older languages are like that, right? Like your name is just, the guy who farms or whatever. Like, or even in English, it's like your name is Miller or Smith or whatever. So I
Well,
mean,
that's usually family names. Your family name is often a vocational name.
right? But I mean,
um,
you can name your child like if you name your child Sophia, you're naming them Wisdom. Like when you go back far enough, the names are all kind of complex and cool and don't because they have hidden meanings to us, but they weren't hidden meanings originally. If you go back far enough, they were just giving them names in the language.
Right, but this is supposedly in the 20s.
Yes, no, obviously.
That somebody would have named their yes, my beloved daughter Viper.
Boa Constrictor, that's what I will call her.
My son, Tarantula, young Rancho, come meet your new sister.
Good old Rancho. That is actually... you know what, Ing? I'm sorry, you're going against your point, because I would love to be called Tarantula, and people would call me Rancho for short. That would be great. Who would not want to be called Tarantula?
Yeah, I was about to say that, it's actually, this sounds like a fucking bowler family to know, to, be part of, and no. This sounds like a good, rip-off of... No, wait, this sounds like the Addams Family. I'm not even going to say rip-off. Ah, yes, Brother Tarantula. Cousin Tarantula. It's so good to see you. But yeah, this is a thing that when it came out, it's I look like all the words that it's a maledictus. It's I don't know what... I read the books, and I have no idea what any of this means.
No.
Somehow books that were, written specifically... for me, when I was a child, my generation, I'm now too old for, and how does that be?
Yeah. No, that. Yeah, the mythology was never that well worked out to begin with.
Wolf.
No, I'm fine with that. That's like a Batman villain name.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, that's true. It's not the worst naming convention.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Because his name isn't Wolf. It's if you know Latin and whatever language Lupin is, then
French, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Lou is French.
Lupin is, I think, wolf in French. But it's...
Which, again, to be fair, is an actual name.
Yes,
right,
this
exactly.
is true.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's actually kind of, that's fair. That's fair enough. The problem with Nagini is just like you say, she's got a Hindi name, and they've retconned it incomprehensibly, and it's...
I mean, technically, it's what it actually is that the word Nag or Naga means snake, and then when you add the suffix of ini to the end of it, it makes it feminine.
Right.
So, for example, a yoga master is usually called a yogi. If they're female, they would often be referred to as a yogini. So that's basically where the convention comes from.
Sure.
What kind of guts me is that when the Harry Potter books were becoming popular was also when I was starting to do online stuff. And around that time is when I started, really kind of researching Sanskrit words and names, and I wanted to use the name, the word Nagini, as my online handle, but then I read Harry Potter, and I was like, nope, can't do that, because then everybody's going to ask me, oh, did you choose that because of Harry Potter? And I was going to be like, no, it's because I'm Indian. And I'm kind of glad I didn't because of this shit now.
Yeah, well, who would have thought that Voldemort's pet snake would now be a problematic character?
No, seriously, how does that happen? Because that's one...
It's because J.K. Rowling does not want to do research and does not want to put systematic thought into her.
In terms of, just plot story-wise, how is this an element that gets, a fleshed-out backstory? And not that I'm against the fleshed-out backstory, but...
Oh, it's...
You know what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, what is the entire point of doing this?
Well, yeah, there's what is the point to the Fantastic
Beasts? Is there a purpose to doing this that it actually leads into Voldemort's story in any way, shape, or form?
This is the problem with every prequel, because you go back and you're like, well, I have to tell the story before the story. And then it becomes, there's almost an onus on it to say, well, let's reveal the secrets of how things happened and how it got to where it is. So now suddenly you've got to come up with,
could have just stayed a goddamn pet
I know.
snake, and it would have been fine.
Well, exactly.
I'm
but
sorry,
you've got to fill it up
the
somehow,
original
so...
origin of Nagini, and it just has Voldemort, like, in a Petco with his face up against the glass. That's one!
Yes. Well, as the Simpsons always called it, like, I like to call that the origin of Maggie's pacifier. You know, it's not something anyone
my
cared
favorite
about
one
or
is
would have thought
the
about.
Archer joke on that. Since when do you carry a switchblade? It's a long story. Then it flashes back just to Archer looking outside a pawn shop that's selling switchblades. Neat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I always get in trouble for this, and I'm going to say it on the podcast now. I don't get in trouble for this. I piss people off. I say I'm not a huge fan of the show Better Call Saul. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that show.
I am aware of it. I have not watched it.
Same.
I'm a huge fan. I really enjoy Breaking Bad. I know it's become the symbol of, like, edgelord idiots, but it is a really good show, I think, and it's about, you know, all the things that, you know, people misinterpret it to be about, like, oh, this is awesome. It's like, no, it's criticizing all that stuff. The thing about Better Call Saul is Saul Goodman's a great character. He absolutely should, you know, when I heard he was getting his own show, that's a great idea. I don't know if you know the Breaking Bad either. He's his lawyer.
Vaguely, I have not watched it.
Yeah, he's his lawyer.
The thing that I know, that Saul Goodman is a criminal lawyer, and the joke is that he's a criminal
lawyer. Exactly. Like, at one point, he basically, once his operation starts to get bigger and bigger, they're like, we need kind of someone who can advise us. They find a lawyer who is very, very shady and clearly involved with, criminal stuff. And he becomes like this wise-ass comic relief lawyer, of course, played by Bob Odenkirk. And it was very, you know, he was a great character because he was like a con artist lawyer. You know, he had a law degree that he could use to run scams, basically. And he saw Walter White, he saw dollar signs, and he went, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be, you know, this is going to make me real rich for once and for all.
And then his life was ruined.
Yeah, well, everyone's life was ruined on Breaking Bad eventually. It's crime doesn't pay is very firmly the moral of Breaking Bad. But what frustrates me is that it's like, okay, great, here's a character. He could absolutely spin off and have his adventures and have, you know, exciting adventures as a con artist. And the show is a prequel, for one thing. And that's largely so they can bring in a lot of characters on Breaking Bad who, let's say, would not have been able to show up if it had been set after the events of Breaking Bad. Yeah, obviously. And this is the thing, you're watching it, it's like, there's so many great actors, and it is literally a show where you've got all these actors where they could read the phone book and it would be fascinating. And they almost put that to the test, because that's almost what is happening on Breaking Bad. There's so much slow-moving stuff, and so much stuff that is setting up things that were already paid off on Breaking Bad. Like this season, they're dealing with this big rivalry between two criminal characters who we already saw the resolution of that on Breaking Bad. But they're devoting all this thing to it. And we're like, yes, but more. It's like, that cannot pay off on the show Better Call Saul. It's like, it's all these characters, and it's like, yeah, you want to get these actors back, and you want to see them doing stuff, and it's great to see them again, but it means this show becomes just an appendage of Breaking Bad that can never do its own thing. And it's like, oh, here's how Saul became a crook, is basically the story. It's like, I don't really, unlike Walter White, him becoming a crook was a big deal, because he was a suburbanite nobody, and he became a crime lord. Saul was always a kind of shady, and he just became more shady. And we're kind of going through the same process. Like, I don't care. I want to see him going out and running crazy scams. He's not even called Saul Goodman on the show, which is insane to me. He did say that. Saul Goodman's not his real name. His name is Jimmy McGill. And he calls himself... In the show, he said he called himself Saul Goodman because people wanted a Jewish lawyer, basically. But he's an Irish guy. That's what he said. But, you know, now it's, you know, you're learning that, oh, he has... you know, issues with his family name because his brother is, you know, he hates his brother, and like there's all this kind of stuff like that. And again, it's needless prequelitis, essentially. I get it. See, it's a very good show in many ways, but it's all this unnecessary stuff that we don't need from being a prequel. It falls into all the same traps as most prequel stories do, because you're like, oh, what about the origin of blah, blah, blah. It's like, we don't need the origin. We can intuit it. We can look at these characters and learn and figure out all this stuff about their backstory. In fact, there's a character on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul who was notable because he didn't really have a backstory. They finally gave him like a one sequence backstory, and some people felt he shouldn't have even gotten that because he's an enigmatic character who we don't know anything about. This is Gus Fring I'm talking about. That was actually cool, and even on Better Call Saul, they've actually done a pretty good job of not going crazy with his backstory. But again, it's the whole problem with this kind of story. Anyway, sorry to rant about that, but that's just something that's bugging me because I see so many people going, "Oh, Better Call Saul, it's the best show ever. It's better than Breaking Bad." I'm like, no, it's great to watch. It's got these great actors in it, but the story they're telling is not the right story, in my humble opinion. And it's because of prequels. Even Hannibal, that's probably the best prequel story ever. Hannibal, the TV show, because that is a prequel.
Well,
and
I mean, not because they quickly jettisoned the idea of it being a prequel to anything.
That's true. Yeah, that's the thing. It stops being like it ends up catching up with the events of the books and everything anyway.
And they start using elements from the books in different places and just...
Right.
And it's now just a series inspired by those books.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's how they make it work, because otherwise we don't need to see how... And, I mean, of course, there was a prequel movie made of Hannibal Lecter, if I'm not mistaken. And apparently it was like...
that we don't speak of.
Yeah, which I haven't watched it, but apparently it's, here's how he became a cannibal. And again, you don't need that. You don't need to learn that. I think I mentioned this before, the Star Wars prequel, Gary Kurtz, who just passed on this week, if I'm not mistaken. He was the producer. He was kind of the old hand, talking to George Lucas, who was the young kid, fairly fresh out of film school. And when they were doing Star Wars, and once it started to take off, once the first movie was a hit, he was like, well, what are episodes 1, 2, and 3 going to be about? And Kurtz was like, well, you got to set it, like, thousands of years before, totally new characters, I guess the founding of the Jedi, whatever. Stuff that is only very vaguely alluded to, but we have all this room to tell stories in. And Lucas, for whatever reason, decided, no, it's going to be about Anakin Skywalker. It's going to tell a story that we already know basically all the beats of, spread out over 3 movies. Yeah.
I can understand him wanting to do a story about the Clone Wars, because that is dropped in A New Hope, and that is something people were genuinely curious about, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to still have a pre-Darth Vader story.
You know what? I get it, and the Clone Wars, those sound cool. But you know what? They're cool because somebody mentions them, and you can use your imagination to figure out what they were. It's the same thing with Solo. That they did recently. He goes, he's made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Well, now we have to see him make the Kessel Run in 12. It's so much cooler when they just talk about it, and you use your imagination to fill in the blanks of what it is. Not spending the movie, or in the case of the prequels, 3 movies, learning about all this stuff, and finding all this stuff out. Like, I'm 100% against that. I'm like, let there be some mystery. Let the audience do some of the work with their imagination, and what they will come up with will always be cooler for them than anything you bother to put on screen. The only reason to put it on screen is to milk it for more cash, which is, of course, why they are making more Harry Potter movies after the story is over.
Oh, of course. And they're doing... aren't they doing a Cursed Child movie, even though that play was not well received by anyone?
I don't even know. I don't know anything about Cursed Child.
Which is a sequel to Harry Potter, but it's apparently really poopy.
See, I'm always more...
I disagree, because it has the phrase, "You're ruining Voldemort Day."
Okay, maybe not.
Wait, they say his name? They have a day? Is that the idea? They're happy to name him now? Because...
well, he's officially dead, so...
Well, he was supposed to be officially dead in at first in Harry Potter, too, so... And they still don't talk about it.
Time travel shenanigans has them visiting a version of the future where Voldemort won, and children in school are forced celebrate Voldemort Day.
Oh, okay.
So we have Dolores Umbridge chastising children for ruining Dumbledore Day. I'm sorry, ruining Voldemort Day.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Okay,
also,
that's kinda cool.
I decided to Google Maledictus, and it actually came up with the Harry Potter Wikia. And apparently, and I'm just going to read it, a Maledictus was a term used to denote a female individual whose blood has been cursed from birth and would eventually lead her to becoming into a beast. What manner of beast it might be was entirely dependent on the type of curse they have been afflicted with. The curse, which can be passed down from mother to daughter, can affect a whole family line.
Great.
Yeah.
See that?
That.
Again, by adding all this backstory to something that, you know, a guy killed a snake in Harry Potter, and it was like a heroic moment, and now suddenly you've added all these asterisks next to it, and we're like,
I'm sorry, now I'm just imagining fucking Neville Longbottom in his heroic moment kills a snake, and when his back is turned, it's turned back into a human woman, and just like Hagrid is like awkwardly pushing it with his foot behind a bush, so this fucking kid doesn't see that he just shanked a woman.
Yeah, basically. Because in the movie he cuts her in half, and I'm pretty sure that's what he does in the book as well. So
yeah, with the sword.
There
just is also Hagrid getting his weird battle. Come with me, Harry. There's no cops in the Forbidden Forest.
Also,
this isn't the first time I've had to dump a body for Mr. Dumbledore.
Oh my God, that's probably the truth.
So that's why Harry wanted to become a cop, so he could cover it up when he became.
Of course, there is also a breakdown of maledictus, which is mal is a prefix of Latin origin meaning bad, wrongful, or ill. Dictus in Latin means spoken. Interestingly, it's a masculine term, though it only applies to women. So, yeah, once again, J.K. Rowling doesn't do any kind of research and does not think about things properly.
Yep, yeah. That's right. It's a Latin male, male gendered Latin term, which is now saying is women only. Okay, great.
Yeah, and they even say roughly translated, it could mean spoken ill of or cursed. So, it's a curse that means cursed.
Rowling.
You are cursed with the curse.
Yup! That's basically what it is.
My daughter, Snake, I have terrible news.
You have inherited the curse of the curse.
That's amazing.
Okay, there's an ongoing joke with my wife and I of referring, the word which is forbidden to be spoken, which some call the forbidden word. And this is a serious author doing that, not as a bit.
Oh, gosh.
The forbidden word, which is word. Yeah.
A word which is forbidden, which some call the forbidden word.
Indeed. That's,
Oh, gosh.
Oh, well, we've all had a good laugh, but I think it's time for our Waluigi segment. Or, as you've said, a Bowsette segment, I guess. Which I haven't quite followed all the
Adam, do you know what a Bowsette is?
I believe it's
a lot of people are horny, Adam. Do you know why?
What, do I know why people are horny? Yes.
That specific reason.
Yes. Okay, explain to us what Bowsette is, for those who may not know.
Well, it started with a video game that's getting a re-release on the Switch. And because it's getting a re-release, they were like, well, we gotta add some shit to it. So they decided to take one of the characters, Toadette, who is very, very cute, and put her in a crown, and all of a sudden she looks like Peach! Oh my god. So then people were like, oh my god, what the hell is with this shit? And then somebody was like, wait a second, what if we could apply this to other characters? And then they applied it to Bowser. And then everybody got really horny. And then started applying it to, like, everything in the Mario universe. My favorite Peach versions are still Chain Chomp Peach and Boo Peach.
Yeah, I saw the Chain Chomp Peach. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, yeah, people are weird. That's what it comes down to.
I mean, we've thoroughly mainstreamed.
I just realized I'm also just gonna link to the Prosid video where he just summarizes it.
Oh yeah, it's so good. That's basically where I took my inspiration from. For canting that just now, because that's basically what he does. Except he's much more funnier than me. So
Yeah.
And that English good.
Yeah, I mean it's just funny how the degree to which you can now and didn't they so didn't they say they're actually going to put Bowsette in the game now?
I don't know what the official name for the character is, but yes, there is going to be a feminized Bowser.
What? This
You
is
didn't
new
see it?
to me.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can find the tweet, because, like, oh
What?
god. Because I actually said the actual fuck in response to it. Because
Yeah,
it was,
because
it's either that they were already planning this, or that, like, they just quickly had somebody develop an art and made a silhouette for it. So let me find it. Hold on. Oh my god, they made it unavailable! No! Did they actually get rid of it? No! What? It was suspended?
Maybe they changed their mind.
Oh no! But it's the official Nintendo of America Twitter account. Why is it suspended? The fuck? That's what I'm getting from Twitter right now.
Look, I Jack Twitter Sim am perfectly fine with misogynists and rapists and fascists and outright neo-Nazis on my platform, but I am not putting up with people wanting to fuck Bowser. I will draw the line here in the sand.
Anyways, the tweet was basically Nintendo of America saying, hey, we heard your call, and then they had a picture of Bowser, an arrow, and then a silhouetted picture of what very clearly looked like a fusion of Peach and Bowser. And now the tweet is unavailable, and when I try to click on the link, it goes to account suspended? Oh, I see why. It was a copycat account, so it wasn't official. That's why. Okay, good.
Well done! Well done, clever trickster. You have again bamboozled us.
But they would be very stupid to not make it something that could go on any single character and have them turn into a version of Peach. Right. Even if it's just like the Smurfy, the Kirby principle, where like they just get like a wig.
Well, this is.
I mean, I already made the joke that the version of Wario getting it is that the crown goes on him and has no effect, because Wario already is completely sure that he's as sexy as anything possibly can be.
Ah!
Too sexy for my crown. Too sexy for my crown. Well, as we've seen, I mean, you say, oh, well, Nintendo has to include this now, but as we've seen, they barely wanted to include Waluigi, apparently.
That's true.
He was a fight, so you've got to assume this kind of nonsense is going to be slightly resistant, but,
yeah.
I mean...
It's just quite clear that they did not realize what eventually just happened as a result of them introducing the concept of Peachette and how that just confused everybody. And, like, of course somebody's going to turn Bowser into a lady, because they've been doing that for years already.
No, I have to stop!
You just gave us a canon reason for it to happen now!
I have to stop. That is not of course. This is not a direct logic A to B.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is that people have been drawing feminized versions of Bowser for a very long time. Sometimes they've been sexy and sometimes they haven't been. Even if you look at the Bowsette drawings, you can see that there's a wide gamut of people interpreting what exactly that would look like. And some people just draw giant tits and other people draw muscular women, I should say. And both are perfectly fine.
All Bowsettes
but it's just
are
the
valid.
main thing. Yeah, exactly. The main thing is that they've just given fan artists a canon reason as to how this could potentially happen because of this goddamn crown. And all they did was put it on Toadette.
Guys, we are missing the elephant in the room, though. Since we occasionally discuss Mario lore and do into deep delves.
Oh, yeah.
Is Peach herself simply a normal Toad who is wearing this crown that turns herself into a more normally proportioned humanoid, and that is her entire claim to royalty over the other Toads.
I believe, yes, is that Peach is a evolution of the Toads.
Well, isn't that like the issue they had with the Mario Odyssey, where he throws his hat on people and they become Mario, and so Mario is a hat?
No, he possesses...
No.
No. Mario... No, Adam, that's ridiculous. Mario simply has a friend who is a ghost possessing a hat, who uses his magic to have Mario possess people he throws his hat on. Don't be ridiculous.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm so embarrassed.
We need to logic this properly. God.
Mario isn't the hat, Adam. The hat has its own name, and it's Cappy.
Is it really?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Cappy.
And what's the name of the is the tiara named Tiara, or is it something else?
Tiara E.
Cappy's sister.
Yeah.
Oh no, she's just Tiara.
She's just Tiara. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But she's
Cappy has a sister whose name is Tiara. I wasn't sure if her name was Tiara because she is a tiara, or if she's a tiara with the name that's something else.
I feel like she's not actually a tiara. She's actually a crown, which is a different thing. But I don't know.
Well, look, they're not like the Harry Potter people. They don't just name people what they are. I mean, Cappy is a long family name, but they're not just going to name, like, a child who's born into a crown a tiara. Actually, she is a tiara.
How was Remus's parents supposed to know when they have the last name of Lupin that their son would eventually become cursed with the werewolf curse?
And they named him Remus.
Exactly.
I told you we should have named him Well-Hung Rich Son.
Nomenclature is destiny.
This is all your fault, Romulus. I should have never listened to you.
Because at least in Cappy and Tiara's defense, they're ghosts. So they're named after what they are.
Yeah.
From an entire nation of ghosts who are hats.
Yeah.
Called the Bonnetters.
Yep. Although, shouldn't Cappy be called a top hat?
Well,
Isn't
no,
he
because
actually
it's
a
not
top hat?
exactly directly of his name.
Okay.
Also, they can seemingly turn into any kind of hat they want, so...
Ah. Okay.
Wow.
Alright.
It's
just when I think of cap, I usually tend to think of a newspaper boy cap rather than a top hat, which is the form he normally has.
I mean,
but anyway.
hats also don't normally have hair, which he has too, so...
Oh, that's true. Mario Odyssey is fucking weird.
If you want something weird, if you want something even more head-scratching, the race that are entirely just animated ghostly hats, their main export seems to be selling hats to non-hat-based people.
Oh, God! Okay.
Well, that's fine. That's like building, it's like if you were a mannequin factory, and that was your main export, basically, right? That's the equivalent of that for a hat, right? A non-living thing that looks exactly like you.
I guess.
I've put way too much thought into this, clearly. We all have.
It's okay.
It's late at night, we're all going insane with...
It's
with all
okay.
this. It's okay.
Well, in any case, Bowsette fandom shouldn't implode on itself just because everybody's arguing as to what exactly Bowsette should look like, whether or not she should be red-haired, or blonde-haired, or if she should be buff, or if she just should not be buff.
Yeah, when I heard Bowser as a woman, I was like, obviously pictured something, a certain thing, and then when I looked at the thing, it's just like goth, or metal,
Yeah,
Peach, basically.
It's more like if Peach suddenly went through a weird punk rock phase.
Yeah. with her spiked
Which is
armbands.
ridiculous. Everyone knows that Peach is a big fan of Milli Vanilli.
Oh, God.
I see it. I get it.
No, give me a second. Just to prove I didn't pull that just out of a hat, Ghost.
Oh, God. Oh, God,
Milli
that's
Vanilli.
right. I forgot that they did do that they did do a Punk Peach.
Is this from the 80s cartoon?
Yes.
Or 90s
Yeah,
cartoon?
the Super Mario Brothers Super Show in the cartoon segment.
She was yes. It's a picture of Peach wearing a Milli Vanilli shirt. And
With
just a general...
ripped jeans.
I'm sorry, there's an even better gif.
Oh no. Oh no.
That's just the full scene of her dying.
No, you just did the Pro ZD link again.
I shouldn't have. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh.
Oh, it's...
The full gif is like a zoom up from the Punk boots like all the way to the top of Peach's head, and then cuts to Toad, who is seemingly wavering back and forth, and then falling down in like
in awe,
in like religious reverence, like actually like kneeling with like hands on the ground.
Yeah, he's fully
princess.
prostrating himself.
The penitent Toad shall pass.
I'm sure this version of Peach has also been cosplayed. Like, this version
Has
of
it,
Peach must
though?
have been cosplayed.
Well, we may have made a brilliant, unearthed a hidden gem here.
You
for
would
cosplay.
be surprised the sort of things that have been cosplayed.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't.
Because there's definitely more than enough people who plan on cosplaying Bowsette at this point, so...
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Indeed.
Is this real?
Yes, this is real!
Is this real? Is this real life?
Is this just fantasy? The Super Mario Brothers Super Show looked like it was pretty weird. I never watched it, but some pretty weird...
I rented a VHS once from not Blockbuster, but from another video rental place near us. And so I don't think this episode was on that. Okay.
Yeah, well, we've got... Yeah.
So the question is, in Mario Odyssey, does he have that as a costume?
No, sadly.
Ah.
But he definitely...
If only.
It's a heavy metal Mario, from what I can tell.
I don't know if it's heavy metal, but he's got a dreadlock wig.
It's ZZ Top Mario. How about that?
Yeah.
He's got the wig and the cap.
Also, enjoy apparently Peach dressed up as Final Pam at one point.
All right. Well, all right. This is getting too visually based for a podcast, I think.
I know. We clearly should have logged off a while ago. I am just so fucking...
It's all good. Sorry, friends.
I have just found such an amazing hole.
Yes. Yes. Well, on that note, talking about Ing's amazing hole, I think we'll get...
Bowsette's Amazing Hole is now our episode title, calling it.
Bowsette's Amazing Hole. Well, I was just going to call it the forbidden word, or as some call it, the word that is forbidden. Anyway.
Damn, that's also good.
Or possibly
word which is forbidden, which some call the forbidden word.
Yeah.
Although Wolf...
Either that or you just call it Wolf Wolf.
Wolf.
No, we'll call this one podcast episode.
That's really meta. Everyone's going to be, what?
What?
Wait till the end to get the joke.
Yes. This will make sense. These titles, well, that's all of our titles. All of our titles are completely incomprehensible until you actually listen to them.
Well, that's how it should be.
Yeah. Anyway, so okay, so I think we've reached the time of night where we're all very silly and collapsing from lack of sleep. So I think we're gonna wrap.
Normal?
It's not normal at all.
I cannot get over. There are so many good fucking images for posting just in this one hole. Just from searching this one vision thread from Mario.
Well, remember the it wasn't the Mario Super Show, it was the other one, Captain Ed or whatever, with the Alucard, the Dracula's son, who was like the skateboarding cool kid or whatever. I'll see if I can put these up on the YouTube video, but We'll have to
Oh
see.
my god, why would anyone make that?
Yeah, it's disturbing, but it's Toad skeleton. All right, enough. Leave, please. Mercy, mercy, mercying. All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up for the night. We all just a reminder: you can see links to everything we've been talking about in the added back matter or stuff below either the YouTube or the Patreon video. Both Ing and I, and now Avi, have Patreons. You have a Patreon now, right, Avi?
Yeah, I should probably update it on a regular basis and hope that I get people who will throw money at it. But
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
what you do.
same.
That is how it works. And I will just, for the record, I will be doing something cool all October. For my Patreon, I will be doing a cryptid a day. I'll be making up a cryptid every day and posting that on my Patreon. So subscribe for that.
Idea.
Yes, and I'm also going to plug the other podcast that I am working on with my friend Phil Rice called What Mad
Yay!
Universe, which is about
Yay!
pulp and the history of sci-fi and fantasy. So that's going to be kind of cool. I'll provide a link to that as well. You guys have anything you want to plug? Ing, I know you got some stuff.
I got the Patreon, but that's pretty much it right now.
Anyway,
it's all good.
It's very late at night, so no, it's not. It's not that late, but we're all very tired. So I think we'll make that adieu for now. And so farewell from all of us in the Destroy All Clickbait family. Please tip generously, and y'all come back now. You hear?